Hi, everybody. I'm Reverend Catie Scudera,
I'm Jenna Crawford.
and we're the ministers serving First Parish in Needham, Unitarian Universalist. And we welcome you to our April 2022 Couch Conversation, where we talk about the monthly theme at First Parish. Our monthly theme influences our choices for topics during our worship services and our small group ministries and our religious exploration program. And in April, we chose the challenging theological topic of atonement. And so I've been thinking a lot about atonement from the angle of it being at one mint, which is one way to think about atonement, being at one. But I think today we're actually going to be talking about a different, I guess, a more standard way of talking about atonement, which is thinking about making amends when something's gone wrong.
So I hadn't heard your thoughts about atonement at 1 minute. So I'd love to hear more about that either at the end of this conversation or just offline. But I wanted to share with you all this resource. Can you see this, Reverend Catie?
Oh, yes. Oh, look at us sharing a screen. Oh,
I know. Hopefully this comes out in the final cut of our video. I think it should. So this is from, as you all probably know by now, I love Euro-American shame researcher Brene Brown. This is from one of her podcast episodes where I imagine she interviewed Dr. Harriet Lerner. I actually haven't listened to this episode specifically, but had remembered an allusion to it in another episode. So pulled up this resource of the 9 essential ingredients of a true apology from her book, Why Won't You Apologize? And so I just wanted to go through some of these because I think it's great. So the first one is the apology does not include the word but. The second, that it keeps the focus on your actions and not on the other person's response. The third, it includes an offer of reparation or restitution that fits the situation. The fourth, that it does not overdo it. The fifth, it doesn't get caught up in who's more to blame or who started it. The sixth, it requires that you do your best to avoid a repeat performance. 7, it should not serve to silence. 8, it should not be offered to make you feel better if it risks making the hurt party feel worse. And 9, it does not ask the hurt party to do anything, not even to forgive. I think this is great. Reverend Catie, do you have any of the 9 that are particularly challenging for you, or any reflections like from, just sort of personal reflections on these 9 ingredients of an apology?
First of it, so obvious. Yes, there are certainly parts I find hard. We'll discuss that in a moment. But I also just love that you brought this to us. Thank you, Dr. Harriet Lerner and Dr. Brene Brown. This is a very detailed way of describing. I always think about apologies sort of in a more simplistic way. Like it should be, you should acknowledge what you did wrong, promise not to do it again, and offer repair if it's possible. But this really gets into, I feel like this is a very helpful sequence. It's sometimes literally like a number 1 telling you what not to say. If you're about to say but, it's not a true apology. I would say probably what I struggle with the most involves number 1, using the word but is mostly about number 5, of not getting caught up in who's more to blame or who started it. Or what sometimes happens with apologies, and I'm sure certainly guilty of this, of apologizing as to prompt the other person to be like, I too have things to apologize for in this situation. Then being really angry if they don't return my apology, which I guess gets us to number 9, does not ask the hurt party to do anything. But how about you, Jenna? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I connect with pretty much all of the points that you shared, actually. I think, which brings me to sort of maybe a more meta reflection, but I think it's really hard to strike a balance between like self-love, right? And not feeling you have to attach your self-worth to certain things, and just like real deep self-love, and also humility, right? I think the way it's often taught is that you're like in one mode or you're in the other mode, and that they might even be mutually exclusive. And I don't actually think they need to be mutually exclusive, right? But I think that's a really mature, like sort of mature spiritual posture to be in, that like you can have self-love and also realize like, I really bungled that thing. Like, oh darn, like it's time for me to go apologize and not say but, and not uh require the other person to forgive me. And I think, yeah, I think moving from like feeling like you need to toggle between like self-love and humility into like, no, they can actually go together and be really connected, it's hard. It's really,
It is.
it's really tough. So I very much appreciate these 9 ingredients, because it's helpful for me. I don't always get it right.
Yes, no, and none of us do. It actually, what you're describing with the self-love and humility and thinking about utilizing these 9 suggestions in an apology, it reminds me of a way I commonly refer to our Universalist and Unitarian heritages theologically, which is that Universalism tells us that we are loved and just fine, just the way we are. And our Unitarian heritage tells us, but we could be better. That tension between the Universalist universal salvation and the Unitarian salvation by character, that those can be in a dance with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that does, you were asking me about the at-one-ment. I often think about atonement is that when if we sin, if we make a mistake, if we miss the mark, it's becoming at one again with our community, rebuilding relationship, at one with ourselves, having self-love, self-respect, avoiding shame. We might be guilty, and that's why we make an apology, but if we don't make the apology, the likelihood it's going to become shame is much higher, as Dr. Brene Brown told us. And for folks who believe in a higher power, that the atonement, the at-one-ment, is also with that that greater love, that spirit of life and love that that is driving us towards greater compassion and justice. So all of these relationships with ourselves, with our community, with that which we hold most dear, all of these things require occasionally humility and apology so that we continue to have strong self-compassion and compassion for others.
Oh, I really love that. Thanks for bringing that into this conversation and this ministry theme of the month. Yeah, I think maybe to sort of wrap up, but the other thing this reminds me of is something we've been talking about in our DEI committee and in the Widening the Circle of Concern report of the challenge of perfectionism and how perfectionism is part of white supremacy culture, right? And that's, I think, where you can get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I messed up, I'm not a good person anymore, right? Like I'm an Enneagram 1, and Enneagram, one of the names of, you can refer to Enneagram 1s as reformers or perfectionists, and it's this like precarious positioning of your self-worth on getting every single thing right. And when you can move into a space where it's not required that you get everything right in order to be worthy, be good, be valuable, that's where a lot of good growth and learning and anti-oppression work and justice work can happen. So in a way, this kind of 9 essential ingredients of a true apology can help us in some of our larger anti-oppression, dismantling white supremacy work as well, of helping us dismantle that perfectionism piece for those of us who struggle with it a lot.
Yeah, especially for those of us who have societal privileges that have been inherited. Thinking about number 3 on here, the reparation or restitution, that fits that situation of how our nation and the world have systematically disadvantaged certain groups of people. What do we owe? How do we make repair? Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up as well. And I'm curious for all of our folks. Oh, and I'll say, it's another couch conversation. We talk about our Enneagrams. Yours is fine. Yours is fine. Number 1s, you're fine. But I'm curious for folks who are watching, and maybe, yeah, we can go back big ourselves, right? Yeah, and folks can find this on Brene Brown's website or Harriet Learner's
This is on Brene Brown's website. So it's, if you Google maybe Brene Brown ingredients apology Harriet Lerner or some combination of those things, I'm sure it'll come up.
It'll appear. No, just in case people want to reference later. But for all of you who are watching, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, or if you came over to one of those from Instagram, please let us know either in the comments or send us an email about what you think are the essential ingredients to a true apology, and let us know if you're wrestling with any of them, or if you think something's missing. Maybe you have a 10th element, ingredient that you would like to share. But we would love to hear from you. Our contact information is on the church website, uuneedham.org. And hopefully we'll be hearing from you soon, or seeing you either on Zoom or in person on Sunday mornings. But thanks so much for tuning in and listening.
See you next month.
Yeah, see you then. Bye-bye.